Let's take a look at example 1 and actually compute variance and standard deviation for a set of numbers that we're given. So in this instance, we are given a set of numbers right here. And what we will do is we will actually calculate the variance first and then the standard deviation. So given a set of numbers, the first thing that you need to do is obviously you have to find the mean or the average of that particular set of numbers. So what that means that for this set of numbers here, we need to add together 51, 65, 84, 75, 77, and 68 together, and then we have to divide it by the total number of numbers that are in that data set, which in this case is 6. So when you add those numbers together, you get 420, and since there are 6 numbers in the data set, that means that the average or the mean of that particular data set is 70. Okay, so now that we know that the mean value is 70, we can go through and actually calculate uh, the variance of this particular data set. So we want to indicate first and foremost what the data values are. So what I'm going to do in this first column here on the left-hand side is I'm actually just going to write in the numbers just from top to bottom. So you're going to start off with 51, 65, 84, 75, 77, and finally 68. So what I've done is I've just taken each individual number in the data set and I've placed it in this particular section here, this data value section. The next piece, what I need to do in this middle column, the green here, is I'm going to take the actual data value and I'm going to subtract the mean from the data value. So what that means is that I'm actually going to subtract 70 from every single one of these data value numbers we have on the left-hand column. So the first value here that we have is 51. And since the mean or the average is 70, I'm going to subtract 70 from that. Okay? And that's going to give me negative 19. Okay? If I take 70 away from 65, so 65 minus 70, that's going to equal negative 5. If I take 70 away from 84, that will give me 14. If I take 70 away from 75, it will give me 5. If I take 70 away from 77, it leaves me with 7. And finally, if I take 70 away from 68, that will leave me with negative 2. Okay? So the next thing that I need to do is I actually need to square the difference. So in this final column on the right-hand side, where it says square the difference, the result that you got, this negative 19, negative 5, 14, 5, and so forth, we're going to square that number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take negative 19 and I'm going to square it, and it's going to give me 361. Negative 5 squared is going to give me positive 25. 14 squared will give me 196. 5 squared is 25. 7 squared is 49. And negative 2 squared is 4. So one of the things you'll notice is that the squared difference of all of the value minus the mean numbers is always positive. That's because anytime that you square a number, whether it's positive or negative, it's going to end up being a positive number. Okay, so what we need to do, so we've found the mean, we've subtracted the mean from each data side, we've added, so now what we need to do is we need to add the square numbers together. So I need to add 361 plus 25 plus 196 plus 25 plus 49 plus 4. Okay, and that gives me a grand total. I'm just going to write it off here on the side. The 660. Okay, so that's for step 3. So now we're on step 4 here, where it says divide the sum of the squares by the number of data set values. So we know that there are 6 numbers within the data set. Okay, we can count them here. We've got 51, 65, 84, 75, 77, 68. Those are the numbers in the original data set. There's 6 of them. So we're actually going to divide 660. I'm just going to quickly put the 660 total down there. So I'm going to divide 660 by 6. Okay, and that's going to give me 110. Okay, and so what we've just done is we just calculated our variance. That's what this piece is here. The variance is the total number, the total of all of the squared values divided by the number of data set, or numbers within the data set. So 660 divided by 6, our variance is 110. Okay? So if we now want to figure out what our standard deviation is, I'm going to go back to blue here. Steps for standard deviation, we have to calculate the square root of the variance. Okay? Well, we know what the variance is. The variance is 110. So standard deviation is the square root of the variance. Okay? So the square root of 110 is going to give us approximately 10.5. So I'm going to round it up to one data point, or to one decimal point rather. Okay, and so this is how you go about calculating the variance and the standard deviation. First things first, you need to calculate the average of the numbers within the data set. Then you need to take each individual number within the data set, subtract the mean from it, and then the resulting total you square. And then once you've done that for all of the data set numbers, you add all of the square differences. And then you find the average of the square differences. That gives you the variance. And then in order to figure out the standard deviation, you take the square root of the variance.